John D. Rockefeller purportedly built a massive oil monopoly through Standard Oil in the late 1800s using unethical business tactics. He eliminated competition through predatory pricing, secret transport deals, and other coercive practices. For example, Rockefeller would temporarily slash prices in a low-kill to bankrupt small oil refining rivals. He also clandestinely negotiated with railroads to obtain discounted oil shipping rates, disadvantageous to competitors. This allowed him to undercut and acquire many smaller companies. By 1890, Rockefeller had consolidated control of over 85% of America's oil refining through Standard Oil's ruthless expansion. He stifled market competition to maximize his profits. Rockefeller also obscured Standard Oil's near-monopoly status by developing a complex web of subsidiaries. This corporate maze helped him evade regulations and taxes for years. The growth of Standard Oil made Rockefeller America's first billionaire, but it occurred through destructive monopolistic practices. His unethical tactics ruined many small entrepreneurs. In many ways, the business practices used by Rockefeller mirror those of Kenya's first family, the Kenyattas. Both exploited government connections to gain unfair advantages over rivals and eliminate competition. This is what is called state capture.
The people in power compete with citizens for scarce resources, where the people in power use their position to advantage themselves to get business unfairly, where people in power allocate resources to projects where they have an interest.
The Kenyatta family has dominated business and politics in Kenya since independence in 1963. Founding President Jomo Kenyatta and his kin amassed enormous wealth and influence through dubious means, including land grabbing, abuse of power, and stifling competition. This video will examine how the Kenyattas accumulated their business empire through potentially unethical practices. Land grabbing. Jomo Kenyatta took advantage of his position as Kenya's first president to illegally acquire vast tracts of land soon after the British left. The British colonial administration had seized prime land from native Kenyans and given it to white settlers. The million-acre settlement program was supposed to retrieve this land for redistribution to displaced natives. However, Kenyatta instead allotted much of the recovered land to himself, his family, and allies, even though they were not landless. By the time of Kenyatta's death in 1978, his family alone owned approximately 500,000 prime acres. In comparison, the average landholding for native families was less than 1 acre. The Kenyattas also distributed public land, including forest reserves and lands surrounding the capital city, Nairobi. They exempted their acquisitions from review by settlement committees tasked with oversight. Cronies of the president gained access to bank loans and preferential terms for land purchases. Land intended to correct colonial injustices ended up consolidated in the hands of Kenya's new elite. Abusing government connections. The Kenyatta regime leveraged political connections to benefit family-owned businesses. For instance, the president's clearance was necessary to obtain bank loans or business permits. This allowed Kenyatta to award loans and contracts to ventures linked to his family and allies. Ventures not aligned with the Kenyattas found it challenging to overcome administrative and regulatory hurdles. The Kenyatta family also used their political influence to secure protectionist policies, benefiting their businesses. For instance, the patriarch banned imports of basic commodities the family produced like milk. State corporations were also compelled to purchase from Kenyatta-linked firms. These preferential policies squeezed out independent producers and inconvenienced consumers, but they enabled the Kenyattas to rapidly grow their empire. Establishing a dairy monopoly. The Kenyattas diversified into various sectors from farming to hotels and insurance. But their most lucrative enterprise has been dairy. Established in 1993, Brookside has become Kenya's largest milk processor, controlling over 44% of the market. The company built this dominant position through acquisitions of Parastitle's assets like KCC Dairies and private dairy manufacturers. In February 2010, Brookside acquired Spinnett Dairy, thus acquiring Tuzo, Lee, and Everfresh milk brands. In 2013, it took over Buziki Dairyland, securing dominance with the Molo milk brand. Brookside entered Uganda in 2015 by acquiring Samir Agriculture and Livestock Business, and later more investments were made in the highlands of Ethiopia. The recent acquisition of the Delamere yogurt brand further solidified Brookside's monopoly ambitions. However, the Kenyatta-owned giant faces criticism for what some perceive as questionable practices, including controversies surrounding the Samir acquisition, raising concerns about the consolidation of power in the hands of a single family in the dairy market. Critics argued these purchases lacked transparency and may have been facilitated by the Kenyatta regime through government resources, discriminatory policies, and militarization of government authority institutions like HRA to coerce competitors. Brookside also has been accused of routinely threatening rivals with price wars if they do not concede. This was experienced some time back when farmers used to pour milk after dogs could not consume it all. Lastly, KCC's privatization enabled Brookside to exploit KCC's assets like cooling plants across Kenya, stifling small producers. Brookside's unchecked expansion has been detrimental for smallholder dairy farmers. The company exploits its scale to offer lower prices to producers who lack bargaining power. This pressures struggling farmers. Additionally, Brookside exports significant amounts of milk powder abroad, rather than selling locally. This reduces supply to rival processors and affects prices, hampering their viability. Weak regulation enables Brookside's predatory practices. Kenya's Competition Authority recently imposed a fine on Brookside for abusing its dominance. However, activists believe the penalty is inadequate given the scale of Brookside's monopoly and the harm to small farmers. They argue the company's political connections allow it to evade appropriate sanctions. Hiding wealth abroad. The Kenyatta family has concealed its wealth abroad and evaded taxes through offshore accounts in tax havens. The Pandora Papers leak in 2021 revealed Kenyatta family members secretly owned several shell companies and assets worth over $30 million offshore. For instance, the president's mother, Mama Ngina, owned an offshore entity used to acquire a luxury apartment in London. The Kenyattas also stash assets overseas to shield them from scrutiny and to more easily launder ill-gotten wealth. While not illicit per se, this contradicts the ruling family's public stance as transparent and accountable. The former president himself had urged officials to publicly declare their wealth, but he failed to acknowledge his own family has for decades thwarted efforts to map their offshore holdings and shell companies. Trampling political opposition. The immense power wielded by the Kenyattas had proven detrimental to democracy and good governance. The long-standing regime had suppressed political dissent and activism against the ruling family's corruption and business dealings. When an opposition leader initiated a campaign targeting Brookside Dairy's unethical practices, he was arrested multiple times to undermine his challenge. This type of harassment and intimidation maintains the Kenyattas' untouchable status. The autonomy of regulators has also eroded to benefit the Kenyattas' empire. For instance, the Kenyatta-controlled parliament enacted a law hampering the Competition Authority's independence. The Kenyatta regime prioritizes self-preservation over accountability. Tax evasion. In the midst of Kenya's political landscape, reports have surfaced suggesting a connection between President Uhuru Kenyatta and tax exemptions granted to banks associated with him. The National Treasury notably exempted the NCBA Bank, linked to Kenyatta, from a substantial cash $350 million tax waiver during a merger. While there is no direct evidence showcasing Kenyatta's personal intervention in securing this tax exemption, it's logical to reason that this is a decision that is made by the one seated on the throne of Kenya. The NCBA Managing Director, John Gakura, acknowledged the tax waiver, pledging to abide by any court ruling on the matter. This is the only known evasion, but this does not imply it is the sole tax evasion by the Kenyattas. Enduring dynasty. The wealth illegally accumulated by Jomo Kenyatta and expanded under successive presidents, has created an enduring political and business dynasty. The family continues owning massive landholdings and controlling substantial corporate assets. Despite Jomo Kenyatta's death in 1978, his family maintains an influential status as Kenya's first family. In conclusion, the Kenyatta family manipulated government power to pursue self-enrichment at the expense of Kenyans' welfare. The effects of their unethical business dealings endure today through Kenya's high inequality and corruption. Tough reforms are needed to increase transparency and accountability. Until then, Kenya's economy remains rigged to benefit powerful dynasties at the expense of social justice.
We hope this was informative and entertaining for you. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share our videos. This will go far in helping us make better videos. Until next time, keep twitting and achieving your dreams. Don't let anything put you down. Bye for